Okay, great. Hopefully everybody can see our screen share now and our slides. So thank you, Corey and Sustainable Bedford, for inviting us to talk today. We're really excited to see so many people as well that are interested in the talk. It's definitely something that since we've began Artful Menders have become really passionate about, and how fast fashion is affecting the climate. So what we're going to do today is introduce ourselves. I'm Emma, one half of the Artful Menders, and we're going to talk about fast fashion and some of the issues associated with it, to do with the climate. We'll suggest some things that can be done to change our habits to help this. And we're going to introduce some mending techniques, show them to you, some of the techniques that we use. None of them are new skills or particularly difficult. They are obviously, skills that would have once been passed down from generation to the next. And you also don't have any expensive equipment to do them. So we want to encourage you to pick up a needle and thread basically by the end of this presentation. At the beginning of the presentation, we're going to show quite a few statistics, and it's going to be quite wordy and factual, but hopefully we'll also provide lots of practical ways of how to help combat target emissions and the effect that fast fashion is having on the climate. Okay, Cathy.
Hi, so I'm Cathy, and so I'm the second part of the Artful Menders. Emma and I met about 5 years ago in Chesham in Buckinghamshire, and we soon realised we both had very similar careers in theatre design, which you don't often meet anyone else who's a theatre designer. So as two new mums, we loved reminiscing about all of our previous jobs in film and TV and event production as well. We're always keen to start community-led initiatives within Chesham, which we're both so kind of saddened to hear about all the heritage skills and crafts which were being lost. Chesham is very well known for boot making and brush making and things, so all those skills are going. We're very sad to hear. Although I'm currently a bridal wear seamstress, I've previously studied and worked in constructing period costumes. So my role within the Artful Menders tends to cover tackling the intricate machine mends as well as larger alterations. Whereas Emma spent years working in the West End making props and costumes, and she's mainly found in hand-sewn mends for the Artful Menders. Like, she does the darning and the weaving, and she also covers all of the social media side of things as well. So if you send us an email, you'll probably chat to her. I think both of us got our love of sewing from our parents, which also makes us realise how these skills can be lost if just one link in this chain is broken. So at the end of the day, we want people to have a better relationship with their clothing, and if it's valued, it doesn't end up so much in landfill. If we can all choose our clothes well and repair them when necessary, we can all build a healthier relationship with our clothes, and this will have a knock-on effect to the fashion industry as a whole, and will hopefully help reduce carbon emissions in the long run. We all now have access to a much better understanding of how our food chain works, and we think it should be the same for clothing manufacture. Fast food is the same as fast fashion. It's cheap and easy. You get instant satisfaction, but that satisfaction soon disappears. As theatre designers, we love the act of storytelling, and we value the history of things. And so why should our clothes be any different? So together as the Artful Menders, our aim is to encourage people not to throw their items of clothing away. Instead, we need to cherish our clothes and get them to be either mended, altered or upcycled to suit our changing needs.
So here are a few examples of the jobs that we do. No job is too small or too strange, I think is what we say. And since starting the Artful Menders last September, we've tackled everything from repairing golf bags to cuddly toys, slippers and satchels, and yeah, many zips. And on this slide, you can see a few of our recent repairs. So some sashiko mends on the left here, which is a very popular mend because it it's such a beautiful stitch, but also can really change the look of a garment into something quite contemporary. And what's great about it is that you can keep on adding different patches, you know, and adding to the story of the garment. And then on the right, some of the darns and embroidery mends. And again, what's so great about these is that they're all bespoke, you know, and colorways and types of design can be changed as people want them. And what I'm working on at the moment is a blanket. So we also make keepsakes from items that have been made. In this case, lots and lots of baby cardigans were made by the grandmother. And when she sadly passed away, the mum has decided to make some blankets out of them because her children will never wear all of the many cardigans that were made. So we've started unstitching them, and we're going to start stitching them back together as a blanket. So what we are also passionate about doing is teaching some of these skills to people, and feel that everybody now should have at least the basic skills of mending and sewing, so that they can also repair clothing for themselves. So hopefully, if you haven't got it already, at the end of this, you'll be sent a demonstration sheet of some basic stitches. And we're also adding to our YouTube channel and trying to be very tech savvy online as well, and create videos when we can, to try and teach some of the mending as well, as it's so important that people have that choice, that they don't have to buy themselves. They can do it themselves.
So just to scare you into doing some of your repairs yourself, we thought we'd show you some of the probable stats that's going around at the moment. This slide shows some of the stats from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the Wall Street Journal as well. It's American fact, but they're still really relevant, and it's scary to see the predictions for the next 30 years. We also recently learned that there's roughly £208 million weight of waste that was generated by single-use outfits in 2019 alone. So these single-use outfits have mostly been used for weddings, holidays, music festivals, that sort of thing. But a shocking £6 million of waste was created by items just used for social media content. It's pretty scary. These items might have not even left the house.
There we go. So yeah, continuing this with the question, what is the issue with fast fashion? And I think we can see that there are many issues with fast fashion. It is a very broken system, starting right back at the beginning with chemical pollutants and water waste, and actually growing the crops that are used to make the fabrics and the textiles that are then used to make the clothes, to the CO2 emissions and workers' rights when producing them. If we focus on cotton production, which is one of the dirtiest industries in the world, it's actually, cotton as a product is one of the world's most valuable legal non-agricultural product. It uses enormous amounts of pesticides, and the use of child labour is common. So to put it into context, the amount of cotton that's produced every year is 27 million tonnes, which would make 27 t-shirts for everyone on Earth. So obviously, some Western countries use that amount of the amount of cotton that would make 100 t-shirts per person per year, which is completely unsustainable. With the pesticides, there's $3.3 billion of pesticides sprayed on conventionally grown cotton every year, and more pesticides are used for cotton than any other crop that's grown agriculturally. And on top of that, cotton is very thirsty and grown in very hot countries, so a lot of water needs to be used to grow it. Already to this date this year, 90 billion tonnes of water has been used, and it actually pretty much empties seas, which is a horrendous stat. But the Aral Sea in Kazakhstan is more or less gone because of the water that's been used from that to feed the crops, to water the crops. And the UN says that it's one of the worst environmental disasters in history. So obviously, as this water gets used, you know, in theory, it could go back into the ecosystem, but obviously it's more or less contaminated with the pesticides. So as it runs off into rivers and lakes, it in turn poisons inhabitants of villages. And then that takes us to the workers' rights and the workers themselves. So pictured here are workers in India and in China who are checking for the impurities in cotton. Obviously, you have issues around politics as well in these areas. In Yangjiang, in China, there's issues of forced labour and a coercive state-run system. So there's huge political problems with it as well.
So these problems also carry on into the actual production of the garments as well. The garment workers also often used forced into terrible conditions and working in unsafe buildings. The factories are so reliant on the brands that during peak seasons, the workers are forced to work over 20 hours per day. Their basic pay is so low that they often can't refuse any overtime. The fashion industry regards garment workers as low-skilled labour, and this means that child labour is still very common. Most of our clothes are made in countries where workers' rights are limited or completely non-existent. And the sad thing is that the brands will often change factories and production sites purely to find cheaper labour costs elsewhere. And then we can think about what happens after we've finished with our clothes. We often take our clothes to the charity shops, where in theory they'll be enjoyed by others and raise some money for charity. The truth is that the majority of textiles are shipped to places like Uganda and Ghana. And the picture here shows, on the slide shows cattle grazing on top of the mountains of unwanted clothes. These mountains of fabric are periodically burnt to make space for more textiles. As a lot of our clothing is now polyester and ultimately made of plastic, this turns to polluting toxic fumes. The site is also next to a river, which is obviously completely contaminated with plastic pollution. Any clothing shipped to India will automatically be cut up as it enters the country, so as not to impact on their own garment industry, and therefore causes even more waste.
So after seeing some of the shocking stats, what can we do as consumers? We have a lot of power. We're the people that buy these clothes, and we are the people that are putting this huge demand on the earth. So we've got the power to do these things. If we buy less, buy better, look at swapping, sharing, renting clothes, buy pre-loved, and look after your clothes. Ultimately, keep what you have in use. So it may be a bit of a cliche, but the mantra, buy less, buy better, is key when you consider that a staggering 100 billion garments are produced globally every year. So before making a purchase, ask yourself 3 all-important questions. What are you buying and why? What do you really need? And will you wear it at least 30 times? So the C40 says to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees, we need to reduce clothing consumption by 50% by 2030 and 80% by 2050. So that equates to everyone buying 3 to 8 new garments a year. But clearly we need to also compensate for other people buying more. And it's great when you see coverage on things like people saying that they're having a no purchase year or something like that. You know, if you kind of make it your decision not to buy, just to swap or something like that. The image here shows three different types of economies that are possible. The economy that we predominantly have at the moment is a linear economy, where we take, make, consume and waste, as we've been describing. We do some we use the recycling economy, which includes recycling as well. So obviously we're seeing a lot more companies doing things like using recycled polyester, which will be taking plastic bottles and recycling them into the fabric. But obviously the end product of that is still waste. So we really need to be thinking about how to get more into a circular economy system, which has also got the reusing and the repairing in there as well. And what's great is that there are brands that are designing that into the very core of their products and their design system. So just a couple of examples here are mud jeans. Got a pair on today, and I can say that they are very comfortable. And you know, the whole ethos about the company is fantastic. They're a company from the Netherlands who have got circular design embedded in everything. They're regionally produced. You can, obviously, this is in the Netherlands, you'd be able to lease or buy the products from there. Here you can order them and send them back, and they will either then upcycle those same jeans, or they will recycle that material into a new pair of jeans. And you've got a really lovely idea that what you're wearing could have been worn by somebody else. You know, the whole story behind the clothing is very much there. And they also use organic cotton. The other example is community clothing, which is a group of manufacturers and factories in the north of England and Scotland, really going back to the basics of being UK made and using sustainable materials. They've resurrected many factories that would have otherwise been closed because of global production elsewhere. So when it comes to purchasing, just stop and have a real look at what you're buying. Do some research into it, because there are a lot of companies that are starting to do this. A lot of people kind of think, you know, the first hurdle is the fact, you know, lack of information and resources, and you automatically think that it's all going to be much more expensive. But obviously the expense is passed down through the whole chain, really. So there are companies that are bringing down the cost and really looking at this. So researching and looking more at the information about the garments is really important.
You've also got to know the textiles and the clothing to understand it. So basically every item will be made of either natural or synthetic fibres. But although often for marketing reasons they do use a mixture of the two. Natural fibres are fabrics such as cotton and wool, and they'll be able to break down, so they're obviously a lot better for the environment. Whereas synthetic fibres like polyester, polycotton and nylon are basically plastic and will sit in landfill for many generations to come. We also need to look at how we care for our clothing and do whatever we can to make them last longer. We look at the washing instructions on the care label, try to wash each of your items less often. It just makes such a big difference. And even if you're washing half the amount of times, that's still half the amount of microfibers you're washing into our waterways. So it's just as simple as just taking a bit more time before chucking everything into the wash together. If you've worn a jumper once, chances are it doesn't need washing at all. We've also discovered these guppy bags, which are a great way to reduce the amount of microplastics that are being washed into your waterways. So you pop any of your synthetic items into the guppy bags, and then you can wash them at the same time as the natural fibres, but keeping them separate, and it just creates a better wash.
So here are a small amount, really, when you start researching into it. But some of the real leading voices in some of the things that we've been talking about today. Fashion Revolution is a fantastic organisation who've recently been doing a lot of work about who made your clothes, putting the spotlight onto the fashion industry and the production of highlighting who are the people that are making our clothes, who are the people that are mending our clothes, and Orsola de Castro is a huge voice in that. So she's just recently written a book, Love Clothes Last, which is a fantastic read. And a lot of the quotes that you'll see when you start looking into this will be from her. She's a great voice behind it all. Labour Behind the Label is a non-profit organisation who are, again, shining the lights on who is producing these clothes, and other big organisations like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, Greenpeace, have all got great statistics and are doing a lot of work into looking at how we can design a more circular system for all of this. So after all of the doom and gloom and the facts behind it, some practical techniques that that some of you may already know. As we said, there's nothing new, but we're just going to show you a few of the simple hand techniques. Obviously, we also use machine stitching, but we're just going to show you some slight alteration, so a button replacement demonstration. We're going to show you running stitch, which is the basis of sashiko stitching, the ancient Japanese reinforcement technique of textiles. So once you know that, and you can, the sky's the limit really, just a few different sewing stitches, then it all leads into this. And then also a bit of a darn. We'll show you a demonstration of a darn and recommend some of the tools that you'd need to do this kind of thing. And obviously you don't need the fancy tools, anything. We'll show you things that you'd have in the cupboard as well, kind of thing. So I'm going to stop sharing here, I think. There we go. I'll pass you over to Cathy, who's going to start with the first demonstration.
Yes, so I'm going to just push on a button for you. We've had so many people contact us about just the simple act of replacing a button, and so many items of clothing get thrown away because they're missing buttons. So it's a really good one to start with. So hopefully you'll be able to see if I do it on this embroidery hoop. I've just got a plain bit of fabric today, but you'll get the idea of sewing on the button. This is just easier for you to see. So what we do, always start with needle and thread. I use double thread, tying up the two ends of the thread together at the end, if you can see that. And how I do it, just start from the front of the fabric and work the needle through, pull it all the way so the knot is tight into the fabric, and just pop that through a couple of times so that the thread is really, really secure into your garment. You can then pop the needle through the button, work it from the back to the front. And for a 4-hole button like this, I'd go diagonally across. So check your needle with where it's going, and you can go back through the fabric where you'd come out. Pull it tight. Now at this stage, you don't want to go too tight because you still need to get to the second layer of fabric over the top with your buttonhole. Make sure that you've got a little bit of movement there in the button. Work from the back of the fabric, see where your needle is going to go back into, and have a look. It's difficult to see on the screen, but you can see my needle is going up through the button, and pull it again, not too tight, back down. So because you've got double the thread on the needle, you probably only need to go over diagonally over twice. You can then see where you're coming out here and go up through the other buttonholes. And diagonally opposite again. Make sure you're going straight down through the fabric. When it's your own mends, it doesn't matter how it looks from the other side. No one is going to see apart from you. So once you've gone diagonally over twice each way, you find the needle on the back of the fabric, pop it through. Now for the final time, don't go up through the holes in the button. You want to go between the fabric and the button. So you're coming out the side. You'll then be able to wrap the thread around the button a few times to create that button shank and give you enough space to fasten your jacket, whatever you're doing. Lastly, wrap the thread around and hook your needle through to knot it off. As simple as that, and then you can cut up your thread. Now, if I continue on to show you the running stitch, this is a really simple way to mend a hole in your jeans or join two bits of fabric together. So I've got a patch here. What we're going to do, just pin this into place. Like so, nice and flat onto your fabric. Use as many pins as you need. Today, I'm just using, this is just normal embroidery thread, just so you can see what I'm doing. But you can use sashiko thread, which works really, really nicely for this sort of thing. Or if you're trying to do a more invisible running stitch, then just a really good colour match with normal thread is absolutely fine. This I'm just using, it's thicker, just so you can see for this demonstration purpose. So I'm going to start from the back of the fabric. I'm going to pop it up through it, and you can feel where the needle is coming up. Use your fingers, you can feel where it's coming up through. Make sure you're starting in a good place. That will mean that your knot is at the back of the fabric. And that through. Now, the best way to get nice and even stitches is to do a few at the same time. So I'm just going to load the needle up, moving it across in and out of the fabric, across a couple of millimeters, and go back down through the fabric, feeling it the whole time. And then you can pull the needle through multiple layers at the same time. If you're a bit nervous about doing more than one stitch at the same time, just take it really slowly, go down from the top of the fabric down through, pull the needle up, and then work from the back of the fabric again. Just feel where your needle is going to be coming up through. If you're not going quite the right place, take it out, put it back in again. Up and across. From the top, go back down through. Just like that. Now if I show you what we would normally do for a patch, you can run the running stitch all the way along the outside of the patch, and then you can start working into the patch as well. And go across. And just keep on working into the patch with any decoration you want. The running stitch can then be transformed into so many different looks. So once you've got a few lines of the running stitch running across your patch, you can then start really playing around, and you can do simple things like turning the running stitch into really pretty little sashiko crosses, and that makes a really strong mend as well. It's looking good. Oh. Now to finish off, all you can do if you want the knot on the outside, take the thread, wrap it around the needle a couple of times, and holding this thread tight, just pull it back through. There you've got your knot. So it's a good start, but the world is your oyster. You can just keep practicing and keep finding nice little detail stitches, but they all stem from the running stitch. So it's a good way to start.
So I've got a couple of demonstrations actually of the sashiko, I suppose, applications on, these are actually my husband's shorts, but this just shows you, this is kind of just a really quick personal project that started off with a t-shirt that he never used anymore. So I've just been, you know, it's covered in paint. It was too small, all the rest of it. So it's got a nice stretch in it. So it was a great match for these you know, weekend shorts. And that's now getting used as patches. And here I laid the patch on the inside of the short. So what you see on the outside is just the t-shirt through the middle. And I've used two different kinds of colours, so suddenly it just becomes a little bit more interesting. And here, obviously, it's a smaller patch. And what I've done is just done a little running stitch around the patch to almost accentuate it. So you can mix and match the different kind of stitches to make things look a little bit more interesting and build them up. And then at this point, again, just kind of done it out like a little star or something like that. So it suddenly looks just a little bit more interesting. And then the other personal project that is kind of a constant, constantly evolving are my jeans. The classic inner thigh rub means that, again, I've put the patch on the inside, just a cotton, similar colour actually, so you can't really see it, cotton patch, and sashiko stitched over the top of it. And, you know, hour in the evening, watching the television, very easily done. But this pair of jeans are now going to, you know, last another year. What's interesting is I'm discovering that because I'm wearing them more, I'm discovering it wearing in places that if, you know, without this knowledge, I would have replaced them. So things like the edges of the seams are becoming worn. So I'm discovering that I'm needing to do things like, again, just I'm choosing to use really bright cotton. And again, this is just embroidery thread, but by wrapping it around weakened areas that are getting a lot of wear, you can reinforce parts, areas like that as well. And just one other example, this is on a client's dress, but there was a big tear here around the arm, and rather than do the cross stitch on this, we've laid a similar kind of fabric in between the two layers of cotton, and have just done a kind of a straight stitch down it, which, you know, I think looks really attractive because it's not hiding the fact that it's been torn. It's got a bit of a story to it, but it can be used again. I'm going to try something quite fancy now and go over to my phone to show you close up, hopefully, what has that worked? Does
yeah, that looks great. Yeah.
oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Emma. That looks really good.
Okay, great. I don't think I can hear you is the only problem, but anyway, that does, by the by, just kind of wave, or I don't know. So I'm going to show one of the most common uses of a darn is on a sock. Now, very technically, how I started darning is using a jam jar. So I will actually just show you now. There are other tools that you can use, which you may have seen, darning mushrooms. I've got quite a lovely huge one here that I can't wait to use. I got this from our local secondhand craft shop. So obviously the larger the plate, a bit like how Cathy used the embroidery hoop, you know, you can get a nice large piece on here. Just to say, for things like this, if the way that you'd attach the fabric to it and tighten it is you can pull the fabric down and then either use an elastic band, or I often just use a piece of wool to pull the fabric taut over something like this. And then the other lovely thing that you can use is a darn egg. And again, I just got this one from eBay, which has also got a beautiful little ladder hook inside it. So for, you know, hosiery, tights, things like that, just pulling, you can pull the stitches too with that. But again, this is perfect for putting down the toe of a sock. And you'd pull that tight, put a piece of cotton, something around it, and then you'd be able to do that. But I'm going to use the very untechnical jam jar, because I found that the corner of the jam jar just works really well on heels. So that's a really lovely shape. So the first thing that you're going to look at is decipher what area is the most worn. How far are you going to need to darn around the hole? And what I've done is, using the running stitch that Cathy's just shown, I've just done a really quick running stitch around the area that I'm going to focus on, and that will be taken out afterwards. So that can be any subtle piece of cotton that you can remove. So no big knots. You can almost leave the edges completely free. So the choosing your thread, obviously I'm just using a very bright colour so that you can see here. But, you know, again, the world is your oyster with this. Are you going to go visible and use alternate colours, or, you know, are you going to use something that's more in keeping with the garment? It's completely up to you. And the way that you start this off is very simply just pushing it through. So I'm going to take out the jam jar, push it through from the other side, and you actually don't need to do a knot or anything like that, because actually you don't necessarily want knots or, you know, anything that's going to feel funny inside your sock. So you're just going to pull it, but not pull it completely through, and we're going to deal with that afterwards. So once it's pulled through there, I've just gone, what, maybe half a centimetre or so below this line that I'm going to do, and I'm going to do a small little stitch and then come up at the line, at my guideline, and then just pull that so that it's taut. And then I'm going to do a large stitch and try and keep in the line of the stitch of the sock, because these are going to be the weave line. I'm just going, I've come up again and I'm doing another little stitch at the end before I turn back around. So I'm going down and up at the next row of stitches in the sock, and then this is starting the weave. again, just going underneath one and coming up. So what you're doing is reinforcing, you're stopping any further. So obviously if this was a woolen jumper or something like that, all of the stitches, oh, there we go, made a mistake. So what I'm going to do is thread my needle, pull it back, and then rethread that. So all of these techniques are to stop any further damage. So you're by putting these stitches in, you're actually stopping any further fraying or any further stitches coming away, because you're going into the fabric. So again, trying to stay as close as possible to the other row, trying to always come up one stitch along. So I'm going to stop that direction of weave. Again, keeping kind of pulling it taut. And what I'll do is you put the thread into the sock. So this will all get sorted out afterwards when we turn it back inside out. So I'm going to show you the other direction with a different colour. So you carry on that way, and again, we're going to go inside the sock. Okay, let's see if I can get the right kind of spot about there. So we're imagining that it's a big rectangle. And all we're going to do is, so come up around the same line as those stitches are, doing my one little stitch. And then I'm going to go in and out. This is where the weave comes in. So this bit is a little bit tricky in that you've got to concentrate, especially if you're using, like I am, a double embroidery thread. So you just got to concentrate that you're weaving in and out of the right stitches. And then obviously imagining that all of this was woven, you're going to go all the way to the other side. If you can see that, sorry. And exactly the same on this side, you're just going to go down and up the next. Now, even if it's a little bit further, it really doesn't matter, because you can just come back. Trying not to get too hung up on tiny little details, because, you know, there's often a lot to do. Don't worry if you come up slightly, you know, a couple of mils away. But now you're obviously going to weave the alternate threads. So getting there and down, and giving yourself one little stitch again there. Oops, sorry. So you would continue doing this backwards and forwards until you've got to the end. I'm just going to show you finishing off this. So obviously you would have this thread pulled inside the sock, and you turn your sock inside out, and you'd have all of these kind of spider's legs inside. So that bit is underneath too. So we've just got 4. This one's actually been threaded too, which isn't the end of the world, because actually that's going to keep it. So what I might do is just cut that. There we go. So when you've got all of these in a thicker woolly jumper, you'd be able to easily just weave these ends into the stitches of the into the knit. When it's a little bit thinner cotton like this, you're just going to pick them up again and just try and be as subtle as possible with your knot. So you kind of try to pick up just a few of the stitches, because all you're doing is securing it by just weaving up and down and pulling it through. So you're not doing a knot, you're kind of doing, I suppose, a mini weave to secure that thread, and then that would then just get cut there. So you're then going to sew all of these in like that, so that they're nice and short like that. So that's the start of a darn over that kind of hole. And I just really quickly wanted to show you a simpler one, as it were, in that that's obviously looking at a hole, which you'd need for something like this in a sock. But if you can preempt wear and tear in something, then it almost becomes a lot easier. So this is a sock that has just got wear, but obviously in another 6 months or so might end up needing a much more time-consuming darn like that one. But when it's just worn, you can do just a reinforced darn, which is going back, doing exactly what I showed you, but just using the stitches that are there already. So you're literally going to use the worn patch and go up and down. All of the existing stitches in the sock. Obviously this would be underneath, so you can weave it in, but you're reinforcing something before it's broken, which is almost, you know, what we all say we'll do, but there's never a time, but it's the ideal to do that. And you'd end up having a much thicker, better area at the bottom of your sock there. Okay, that's the end of the demos. There we go. I think we've got a couple of minutes for questions. It's probably a very speed through of many things. I don't know if there's any questions, Corey, or if anybody has any comments so far.
There is one that I've spotted. What can you do with woolen items that may have shrunk, and also how do you stop the wool from shrinking?
I don't think I know any way to unshrink something. I don't know if you know anything, Emma, but I think
I use it for patches.
Yeah, it's kind of reusing the item in a different way. Yeah, obviously once it's shrunken so much that it's all felted together, then it becomes a lovely product to be able to make patches out of, because it's not going to unravel. To stop it shrinking in the first place, just as cool a wash as possible, just hand washing it is all I can advise. Have you got anything else, Emma?
No, I'd agree. Unless anybody else has any tips.
Yeah, I do all of that. Unfortunately, after about 10 washes or something, merino wool seems to just shrink, and I don't know why it doesn't. Even lay it out flat and things, and it still shrinks. Don't know why. Anyway.
Sorry about that. Yeah, if you're hand washing it in really cool water, then and drying it flat, you shouldn't have any problem at all. So I'm not sure.
Another question is, does it need to be double thread for darning so you can weave back through it?
No, it's the should have said that the amount of threads, or the embroidery threads, is that what you mean? How many strands of embroidery thread do you think? Is that what you mean? Because I just changed the amount of threads Oh yes, Becky, yeah. I change the amount of threads depending on the thickness of the product. So yeah, I chose 2 for this sock because that kind of feels like the thickness of this cotton, but I've increased that to 4 for this thicker woolly sock. So yeah, it's a bit of that. And obviously when you get to even thicker socks, then you'd use a wool or something like that. So match the threads to the product.
We've got another one. To extend this project, the fashion industry need to be on board. Have you contacted them and did they respond?
Personally, we haven't. With regards to that, no. I mean, we're with the larger battle, I suppose, as you say, is the fashion industry. But with the different groups that we've mentioned in the presentation are doing that, are constantly campaigning to the fashion industry. And I suppose where we feel like we come into it is by being giving people the choice to mend and not to buy. So hopefully, you know, people choosing not to consume is also going to take effect.
I think it's all about education for us, because companies like Primark aren't going to stop making the amount of products if people are still buying them. So if we can persuade people to buy less in the first place, then they'll have that knock-on effect, and they'll be forced to change the way they work with the factories. Then I think we're keen to work with a lot of younger people as well, because lots of kind of teenagers at the moment, they understand the waste of plastics, and then we need to stop that waste, but they're not getting that link between plastics and clothing, and that's where we're focusing our attention at the moment.
Yeah, hopefully all the education that's happened about recycling and plastic waste over the last 10-20 years will also now be filtering into the fashion industry, which we are seeing more of in the various people that we follow on social media. So that's our hope.
This is a good one from Kirsty. She says, I salvage tent fabric from festival sites and create new products from the fabric, but in doing so, create small offcuts / scraps. Any ideas for usage of these small pieces or other fabric thread scraps to avoid sending them to landfill?
We've often used the scraps to refill cuddly toys and things like that. If we're saving cuddly toy in particular, you don't want to throw any of that cherished little scraps of fabric away, do you? So I know we've used that for more the cuddly toys. Obviously, you wouldn't want an entire cushion filled of scraps of tent fabric, possibly, but in really small pieces can be hidden in amongst other bits and pieces.
Yeah, it's a great thing to do.
I can think of is using it as the stuffing instead.
Yeah, and obviously, if it's maybe a more forgiving fabric than the tent fabric, patching and things like that. But yeah, maybe linking up with schools or finding out if there's any kind of salvage place that takes those as well. We've got a great company here called WorkAid who actually take fabrics and repurpose them to different companies. So a bit of research maybe in what's local as well.
Are there any more questions, or shall we wrap up?
Yeah, I've got one. I'm just thinking of the people who are less dexterous than your good selves. Is there an easier way of doing it, such as using glue or something like that to make it quicker and faster? And I know it's a great skill to have, and it's really fantastic. But is there other ways of doing it?
With regards to this kind of fabric, not glue. Well, it's nothing that will last.
Stretch, don't you? The lovely thing about the weaves is that you've got to maintain that movement, which the glue doesn't give you. we do use glued patches for waterproof items, and then it maintains that.
Yeah, there's great things like nylon. You can get rolls of nylon, sticky back nylon for obviously, yeah, waterproof coats and bags and things like that.
One last one. Do you take orders?
Yes. Yeah, head over to our website.
You can always post the items to us, and we'll do the repairs for you.
Yeah, I think that's what we're finding as well. People are often time poor when it comes to doing mends too, so we are eager to help by doing mends as well. That's the issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant. I know we've run over slightly a few minutes, but I just wanted to say thank you to Emma and Cathy for an amazing talk. Where can people find your website and details? So
our website is theartfulmenders.com, and you can email us at info@theartfulmenders.com. So for any inquiries about orders and things like that, and on our website you can also see links to how to get in contact with us. We've got an active Instagram page, so that's the.artful.menders, and also Facebook is the Artful Menders. So yeah, please do link up with us and stay in contact and ask us questions, and we will hope to answer them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Just wanted to share something very quickly. So this week we've got 11 events in total, and there are still loads more to come. So tomorrow we've got one on a disposable society, protecting our natural environment. Booking closing tonight at 11:59 p.m. So do book on if you can. After that, some of the others we've got this week: food waste, climate crisis, home composting, and meat and dairy and climate change. And also another food waste one on Sunday. And you can book it in two ways: by heading to Eventbrite and searching for Sustainable Bedford, or even the event title you were looking for, or you can head to the Sustainable Bedford Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Instagram will have a link in our bio. If you have any questions, you can email me through sustainablebedford@gmail.com. As mentioned, all resources will be sent to you, so do keep a lookout for that.
Great. Yeah, we've got a questionnaire that should hopefully be coming out. We'd love to hear any feedback. That would be wonderful as well. Thanks, Corey.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.